It's all to race for. Coming to turn 4. Oh, he's hit him. He's done it.
What?
Oh, he's taken 2.
Hello and welcome to the magnificent Gfinity Arena, the home of the F1 Esports Pro Series. And tonight we bring you the F1 Esports Pro Exhibition. This is where 20 of the best and world best sim racing drivers go head to head. Tonight they're competing in the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya, and I'm glad to say that joining me on the desk, more than 2 meters apart, is Sky F1's very own Natalie Pinkham. Natalie, great to have you back here again. We're watching the best sim racers going head to head.
Absolutely, and that's why we're back for more. It's been so impressive to see this highly specific, highly skilled, the skill set of these drivers, that a huge amount of focus and dedication to get to that level. And we saw it. Interlagos did not disappoint, did it?
No, it definitely didn't. And now we head to the Spanish Grand Prix. What makes this Grand Prix so special?
Well, it's an interesting one because it often gets criticised for not being very good for overtaking. But actually, as a circuit, I love it because for me, it marks the sort of start of the season in earnest. All the upgrades come at this point in the season. And it's a track that the engineers and drivers and all of us in the press know so well. We do testing there, we race there every year. It nearly fell off the calendar this year, but thankfully they hung on to it. Huge amount of very passionate fans. And actually, if you think about it for 2020, this is the first time and the only time that we've seen the F1 cars this year, because we didn't even get to FP1 in Australia. So it's the only time we've ever seen the cars in 2020. And I don't know, there's something quite special about this place. You've got some incredibly memorable moments. Of course, Max Verstappen winning on his debut for Red Bull there in 2016. Yeah. Pastor Maldonado winning his one and only time in Formula One back in 2012. And, of course, Fernando Alonso in 2006, the only Spanish driver to win the first time in front of his home fans. Well,
that must have been an extra special moment for him. Well, listen, I think you've answered all critics who say maybe this race isn't as exciting. However, let's look at the format tonight. Guys, an 18-minute qualification, 25% race. Damage is on, and there is no driver assist. So this is the best of the best going head-to-head. And when you look at the lineup of previous winners from the F1 Esports Pro Series, the return of Brendan Lee, David Tonitza. Now, there is a driver I do want to talk about. We knew how good he was in the F1 Esports Pro Series. 184 points going. I mean, it's mad that he's sort of fallen off the pace.
It's a bit strange, isn't it? Because last year he was the only one to have scored at every single round. As you say, they didn't race there last year. It'll be interesting to see how they fare. But yeah, it just seems to be a bit off the pace at the moment. Perhaps the others have just stepped up.
Yeah, indeed. Now let's have a look at the drivers and their lineup tonight. Very interesting here. Again, we know how good they are. Daniel Perezny is there for Alfa Romeo. A new lad coming through, Badia Bremond, Alex Jakes, and Matt Gallagher will tell me if I'm correctly pronouncing that. But however, interesting enough for AlphaTauri, could it be seen as a demotion for Joni Tormula? Because Marcel Kiefer came in at Interlagos, replacing Freddy Rasmussen. He's now back. So the 1 and 2 looks like it's Marcel Kiefer and Freddy Rasmussen.
Well, you couldn't get rid of Kiefer after that performance. I mean, he was promoted and it just rose to the challenge. Wasn't he brilliant? His strategy was spot on. And then, of course, he went on to coach Alex Albon through to victory in the Virtual Grand Prix.
He did indeed, and I suppose, could you see it as a demotion, or just how does Joni Tormula come back and...
I suppose psychologically, yes, it is. I mean, but he's got to do what Kiefer did and step up and say, look, I need to be in the senior team. You know, it's a bit like the Pierre Gasly of the real world, and he came back with a bang at the end of the season, didn't he?
Yeah.
With that podium in Interlagos.
Of course. So, Joni Tormula, if you can hear us, make sure you put in a good performance. And there also, a guy that I needed to point out on the Williams, Alvaro Carreton, he's just been immense. He's been a surprise package for Williams. He's improving. It's back-to-back podiums for him. Maybe another night for him to get on the podium.
Yeah, 2 podiums in a row for him, and great to see Williams at the front of the grid.
Indeed.
It's a rare thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Very much a rare thing. However, I'm expecting big things from George Russell tonight in the F1 Virtual Grand Prix, which is also happening in Spain. That's coming up later on at 6 o'clock. But before then, we need to find out who is commentating for us tonight. And I'm glad to say, joining again, the dream team, Alex Jakes and Matt Gallagher. Now, Matt Gallagher, I've got to come to you. The talk of the Twitter at the moment, what's this going on? Racing yourself?
Racing myself? I don't know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, well, you've been racing yourself.
Oh, right, okay. I thought, to be fair, I am in the F1 game as well, so I thought there was some weird thing that had happened that I hadn't seen. But yeah, I've been back in the sim myself, blowing off the cobwebs a little bit. Still not as quick as these guys, nowhere near. But I'd like to think maybe 7 years ago, when none of these guys were doing it, I would have been near the front.
Just don't tell him he's the best teammate.
Yes.
Because it causes all sorts of problems.
Yeah, you'll come back to him and you'll be
Matt.
facing that way, won't you? It won't work at all.
Alex, what do you make of that? The little bit of a storyline that we're putting in there. Joni Tommela being demoted down to AlphaTauri. How would you handle this situation, or how should he handle it?
There's one way to show that you should have been in the Red Bull, and that's to perform well today. It's a new track for all of them. He's got a great opportunity to say, well, you've made a mistake, and here's the evidence. He'll be looking for a podium today. I thought it was ironic as well, because I think he was helping out Kiefer with the setup. Kiefer thanked him last week for the setup. So he's had the setup taken, and then he's been demoted. I mean, no luck for him at all. And he's got a great Tash as well.
Yeah, Tashes are very important. However, Freddy Rasmussen makes a return. That's brilliant for him.
Yeah, well, he was one of the quickest, if not the quickest, towards the end of last season of the F1 Esports. So I fully expect him to be fully back on the pace. It's great to see him back on the grid. Can he take it to Marcel Kiefer, who is the hot shot at the moment? We'll have to wait and see.
All right, gentlemen, well, I'll leave it in your capable hands. Let's get to the qualification.
Thank you very much indeed, Tom. OK, so this is going to be a very interesting qualifying session indeed. We're going to join it already in progress, as we normally do. It's 18 minutes at the start, and Danny Perezne, we're joining it slightly earlier than we normally do, so this is going to be interesting to see. We're going to see a complete picture of qualifying. DRS open for the returning Freddy Rasmussen, as he tries to get on terms with Danny Perezne. And Daniel Perezne, last time out, amazing pole position, Matt, around Interlagos, and then it was a wet race, so we never got to see what he could do in the dry. But right now, he has set down the early benchmark as the rest of the field showing what they've got.
By Danny Perezne's performances in the past, it was kind of lackluster, his pace in the wet. Maybe it was just through lack of practice, not expecting it to rain, which is very silly around Brazil. But either way, we're here in Spain, a very different track, very difficult to overtake, much more difficult than Brazil, it has to be said. We're looking well as Barry Boromant takes a provisional pole position with a 16.260. I think we're going to see some very close margins once again in this qualifying session. Ultimate pace going to have to be a 1:15, sort of high 1:15, maybe an 8 or 9. As the track evolution kicks in towards the end of this session, they will start to get a little bit quicker as the track grips and rubbers down. But right now, 16.2 is the pace, and that's a pretty good banker when they've got probably 2 or 3 more attempts to go.
Cedric Tomé on your screen at the moment. Here he comes, plunging down the hill to turn number 5. The German driver, a one-time winner in the esports across the 3 seasons that we've had of the F1 Esports Series. And now this fantastic section through 7 and 8, back up the hill to turn 9, trying to get the widest possible turn in. And with the DRS, he's got his teammate, Floris Viers, up in 7th position with a 1:16.5. Barry Boromond with the fastest time at the moment, ahead of his teammate. Rasmussen straight back on the pace. Nicolas Longuet in the Renault up to 4th place. And Brendan Lee, the 2-time champion, who came back and won so well. We've had different winners in all of the events that we've run so far. Barry Boromond will be hoping to make that 4 different winners later on today. He's the benchmark at the moment. Cedric Tomé did not enjoy what he was feeding out there at all. Returns to the pits. And Joni Tommela, well, we've already spoken about him. What sort of response does he have from the Red Bull to the Toro Rosso? Strong on setup, and now can he deliver it? The Finnish driver as he comes out of the 16th and final turn around this 4.6 kilometre, 2.8 mile circuit. DRS wide open and heading down to turn number 1.
We mentioned his demotion, but fortunately for him in an esports, there's no demotion in performance. He still very much has the platform to set exactly the same lap time as he would have in the Red Bull. So it's a crucial qualifying and a crucial race for Joni Tommela, who has been here since day one, pretty much. You know, he's been involved in all of the esports series, as far as I'm aware. So, you know, he's very quick, but he's just never been near the top step of the podium. He's had enough pace to very much mix it with these guys, but he has to show that extra bit of performance, that extra bit of spark that F1 teams, especially Red Bull, look for in their drivers. And that's something that Marcel Kiefer did bucket loads in the Brazilian Grand Prix. So if he wants that Red Bull seat, he's going to have to start getting podiums, start winning, and be amongst the chatter of the Beresneys, of the Lees, of the Kiefers, of the Tanitsas. Well, we need to see Tanitsa as well to potentially, or Tonzilla, of course, Alex, to hopefully get him back.
Yeah, please use his official name. Please.
I don't think we're going to see any cameras of these guys racing around this race, but I'm sure that Tonzilla is with him alongside him.
It's been a very, very tidy lap from Joni Toomala as he comes across the line. Where does it put him in the order?
That was his out lap.
Oh, it was. It was. That's why it was tidy. That's why it was tidy, because it wasn't his push lap. So now he's going on to the flyer, and he's got the Alpha in front of him. Danny Beresney, 1/100th of a second away from Barry Boromond.
He may have been pushing, actually, Joni. He may have just got a corner cutting warning, which would have invalidated that. So
he's looking decent on board, but he'll have to go again with a lap taken out of the tyres. And Tomé, who we were following at one point, now back out there. And Nesta Garcia in 18th. Enzo Benito, at the moment, characteristically low down the order. Manuel Biancola and David Tanitsa in 15th position. So Tanitsa, after such a mega start to last year's championship, going in the opposite direction this year. This not official, of course, it's just exhibition races to be enjoyed whilst we're under the very difficult circumstances that we find ourselves under. And Danny Beresney, good response that from the Alfa Romeo driver over the line with a 1:16.1. And it doesn't look a lot in terms of time, but that's a good step forward for him.
I was about to say he looked a little bit out of shape going into that last chicane, but I think you can ride the curbs pretty hard, even with the strict track limits around this circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya. And he takes provisional pole, so these guys really do need to mount some of the curves. It's learning. It's learning which ones you can take advantage of and which ones you absolutely cannot, whether that's going to unsettle the car or if you get a warning in this session. But if you get one warning, that's it. Your lap time is invalidated, and it does not appear on the leaderboard. And Michael Romanidis, pretty much I definitely have said that wrong, but he's up to P3. Freddy Rasmussen now takes pole position by 0.02 of a second. It's great to see him back on the grid, and that is as close as it pretty much gets between himself and Beresney.
So David Tanitsa with the DRS open. Tanitsa heading down to turn number 1. Barry Boromond now the fastest qualifier at the moment, going back ahead of Rasmussen. So the track evolution is appearing. The track getting faster and faster and faster. So you have to balance track position and being last over the line, the clock at 0. Something for them to think about in a few moments' time. You've got to stay with the progression. So good laps all the way through the session so far for Boromond, Rasmussen and Beresney. Michael Romanides has got himself up into 4th ahead of Donoso, then Longuet and Caraton in 7th. In the other Williams, last week's winner Marcel Kiefer in the top 10 ahead of Lucas Blakely. We've seen those two coming together on track, and that's back in China. Lucas Blakely is 9th, Brendan Lee is 10th, David Tanitsa remains in 15th, Enzo Benito in 17th, and we're riding on board with the Italian at the moment.
Closing in on that 1:15 benchmark. Boromond, he's new to the scene in the F1 Esports world. My goodness me, is he making some headlines in these qualifying sessions, at the very least, putting himself near the front. And that's the kind of performances Joni Toomala needs to start doing. You know, just start getting in the headlines, start getting people talking about you, or us. Get us talking about you. Because Barry Boromond, brilliant lap so far, 1:16.0. And this is Enzo Benito, who's currently sitting on a 1:16.9, which has put him 17th on the grid. He is less than a second off of the top time, and yet he is near the back of the grid. Rode that curb quite hard on the exit of the previous corner, and this corner is so difficult on traction. It can unsettle the car so much. Feather the throttle through there, and then we have the last few corners, and this is where the last chicane you can take a few liberties. Oh, not that much of a liberty. You need to hit the apex there. Enzo, he's going to finish the lap, so clearly he thinks he's going to improve somewhat. Comes over the line, and wow, that was a marginal improvement, and unfortunately not enough to even get up to P16.
Not a great day for the Ferrari Driver Academy team. Ferrari's not going nicely at all at the moment, with 15th and 17th, so serious work for them to do in 6 minutes. and a very, very interesting battle for pole position at the moment, at a track where it is so difficult to overtake and where you really want to qualify on the first 2 rows, otherwise it is nigh on impossible. And given the talent in this field, you're not going to see anyone siding their way through the field up the order unless we get mixed conditions. Nicolas Longuet behind his teammate at the moment, but they all have equal performance from these cars, and so it's about the driver making the difference with the setup, and now performing in this part of qualifying. Final 5 minutes, and we will see who's got an answer not only to this 4.6-kilometre circuit, but to the pressure that's about to be heaped upon them. Some drivers have risen to the occasion, Matt. Some have looked very, very comfortable at home. Some haven't enjoyed it at all, and we've seen contenders from the front slip backwards. David Tinitza shows you that in P16.
The bankers have been set, the gauntlet has been laid down by Bouremond, and now they have to get at it. This is when the track is at its quickest. There's no rain or anything like that to contest with. It is perfect conditions at the moment, a beautiful sunny day in Spain. And Danny Beresnay, well, if his previous qualifying performance is anything to go by, he'll be fighting for pole position as he is on a particularly fast lap. Oh, you just see. They tell me, these F1 Esports drivers, about just downshifting slowly into the hairpin. It just doesn't make any sense in my head. Whenever I try and race, I want to downshift as quickly as I possibly can because of what I think is the engine braking. But it's, you know, these guys have put in the serious amount of hours. I really hope that does not count, because if it does, Alex, I might be a little bit annoyed. But
wait for it.
Oh, it counts. Okay,
it counts.
So that is taking liberties to the next level. It's not as bad as China, but that last chicane is something to watch out for.
Well, if there's no penalty there, all the drivers will take heed of that, and we will see people taking a tighter and tighter line across the curbs. For the moment, it is an Alpha front row. It's now for Romeo front row with Bouremond and then Beresnay 1 and 2, Freddy Rasmussen in P3, Lucas Blakely P4. The lap we saw a few moments ago from Nicolas Longuet was an improvement. It put him 4th. Blakely has got involved there once again and has got himself onto the first 2 rows, the crucial first 2 rows of the grid. And Longuet back in the pits along with Donoso, along with Weigand, along with Tourmula and Viers and Huis, Benito and Garcia. Everyone else, Alvaro Caraton up to P2. Everyone else out there pushing right now. Final few moments of qualifying, and we've got a Williams on the front row now. So Beresnay, if it looked like corner cutting from your point of view, he's going to have to cut it even more if he's going to find his way back onto the front row of the grid.
Yeah, still over a 10th behind his teammate, who is making some moves in this session. 3 minutes and 24 seconds remaining. They'll have a chance for one more lap if they've got enough tyres, which is another thing they have to take into account. If they really want to attack this qualifying session, they'll go for the softer of the
Rasmussen goes P1, provisional pole from him for just 0.02 of a second. I was looking at the steering wheel at the time and I was like, yeah, this is definitely at the benchmark. So there you go, nicely done. So he's choosing a slightly different tactic and running with a clear track at the moment. As you can see, only him and Caraton out there at the moment. Nestor Garcia's gone out as well, but that is good enough for P1 after having a week off. He's back with us, and Rasmussen is the driver to beat as we go into the final stages. Here's the Williams that was on the front row of the grid. Alvaro Caraton, and that one's not going to count. And he is coming back to the pits. There we go. So he's back in as well. Rasmussen will join them. Floris Viers has got back out there. We're joining him right now. And Rasmussen's time, will that be enough? Or are we going to see the track improve and we're going to see an Alpha back on pole position?
I still think there's a 1:15 in this. There's going to be someone that breaks that barrier. We're so close. 1:16.022 for Freddy Rasmussen. Back on the provisional pole position at the moment, and just looking down the field, it just changes week by week so much, especially when they're all on their home setups, which just emphasises how closely contested all of these drivers are. Marcel Kiefer, who dominated last time out, P11, 4/10 off pole. Then you've got Joni Tourmula, again, same sort of pace, 16.4. Then towards the back of the grid, you've got Bono Huis, who is Brendan Lee's teammate. Brendan Lee down in P12. Then you've got both the Ferraris in 17th and 19th. anything can happen in these qualifying sessions, and it is so crucial. We see in the race so many times that you have to be near the front of the grid if you want to have a good result.
Yeah, this is not the racetrack to start on the back row of the grid for. It just is not the one that you want.
Someone want to tell Enzo that.
So if Enzo and Nestor can find a lap, it will be very, very beneficial for them. Pretty much everyone on an out lap right now. Forrest Viers was first out of the pits, so he didn't want to mess around with track position at all, just wants the clear racetrack all to himself. And Freddy Rasmussen back in the pits. He will not get another go. So the final stages as they argue over what part of the tarmac they want, and then it's going to be a case of pushing to the line. Will they be trying the different downshifts that Matt was talking about? Will they know which curbs they can cut? We've already seen a pretty liberal line taken across this one a few moments ago, not by this Alpha but the other one, Danny Beresnay. So it's Rasmussen, Boromund, Caraton, Beresnay, Blakely, Longuet, Romanides, Donoso, Weigang and Tomé as we go into the final laps of this qualifying session before we go into the quarter distance race between the best drivers in the world at F1 2019. The drivers from the F1 Esports Series in this exhibition race. And we're on to the final efforts with the clock ticking down. And no more time remaining. Time to beat 1:16.0.
Lucas Blakely has missed the checkered flag, I think, if that outlap graphic is anything to go by. It was so close. Freddy Rasmussen's finished as well, so he cannot defend his current pole position time. Oh, that's interesting. He could tumble a few positions, as the track, as I've mentioned, is the grippiest it can possibly be right now. Barry Boromund into this last sector. Can he take his first ever pole position?
So Barry Boromund, new to the esports setup, but he has been rapid from the word go. And if you want a little spoiler, check the steering wheel when they come across the line if we're on board, because it will give us an idea of whether they're in the benchmark, whether they're heading to a 1:15 or not. Right, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 over the line and pole position with a 1:15.8. Barry Boromund with a super lap. What can everyone else do? Rasmussen has finished. He can't respond. Caraton, Beresnay. What can he do? Johnny Tormula answering the critics with 5th position on the grid there. Super lap from him. Lucas Blakely down to 7th because his teammate Daniel Hadid has gone into 6th. Over the line goes Beresnay, but it's not good enough for pole. It's not good enough for pole. And Danny Beresnay finds himself P3, Boromund, Rasmussen running in the gap. That tactic looks to have worked. And Beresnay, 3rd position. Longuet with a good lap to get up to 4th. Caraton 5th. And Haddad in 6th position. Boromund had the answer. Boromund, the only driver into the 15s.
Finally, somebody to get into the 1:15s. Further down the grid, you had Brendan Lee down in P15. Pretty scintillating qualifying, wouldn't you say?
Very scintillating stuff. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Brilliant work from the guys. I tell you what, when we talk about those times, Matt said it clearly, there's 4/10 of a second between P11 to pole position. And what a race from Barry Boromund there. That was fantastic from him.
Amazing stuff. Separated by the thinnest of margins from the top to the bottom of the grid. Only one driver in the 1:15s. Now, to put that into context, in the F1 world, the lap record is held by Valtteri Bottas at 1:15.406, and the race lap record by Daniel Ricciardo at 1:18.441. This is an incredibly skilled group of guys racing tonight. This race is going to be magnificent. I can't wait.
It is going to be fantastic. But listen, I've got to ask you, if you were looking at this from the F1 world, how would you perceive this race is going to turn out?
Well, look, we've made no secret of the fact that overtaking is difficult here, but it's not impossible. It is a track that these racers actually don't know very well compared to the racers in the real world, because they obviously didn't race here last year. They've got to really go for it down at turn 1. That is your best opportunity to overtake, so expect an exciting start.
Yeah, indeed. Now, we mentioned earlier about Johnny Tormula moving down to the AlphaTauri. He is on P7 going into this, and at one point I thought, is he actually going to get a time? Because it was an outlap that didn't quite happen, but it was fascinating to see that he's done very well. Marcel Kiefer below him in terms of this grid, so that's going to be an interesting battle back and forth throughout.
It really will, because it's important, vital to both of them to really state their claim and put their name down in print with the Red Bull team. It's interesting because Rasmussen would be a bit annoyed with himself not to get another flying lap in before the end there. But P2 was great from him. But again, I just go back to the point, there is nothing to choose between these guys. It's such small margins we're talking about.
Yeah, indeed, those fine margins. However, the Alfa Romeo team looking fantastic. That's a 1 and 3rd position there for them. They're looking brilliant. However, David Tonitza, I said at the beginning of the show, where is David Tonitza? Where's the David Tonitza that we know, scoring 184 points in the F1 Esports Pro Series? And he's in the bottom half of that grid. Is it just everyone you think maybe has improved and therefore he's finding his place, or is it confidence?
Who knows? I'd love to talk to him about it, because it is interesting that he's slightly off form, whether it's perhaps the environment that he's not enjoying so much. Most of these racers seem to excel being in their own homes, but perhaps that extra bit of pressure of being in a stadium like this just brings out an extra edge to their racing. But again, the field is so concertinaed. I think that's the key, is that everybody has raised their game. It's a very competitive field.
And we also mentioned about Alvaro Carreton for the Williams. He's an opportunity to get in that podium if he can just keep a nice and clean race, and hope that one of the drivers ahead makes a mistake.
Yeah.
But there wasn't
P5's a great place to be starting.
It isn't it? But there's a corner that they seem to be cutting right at the chicane just before they come in to cross the finishing line. What is going on there? I mean, over the drivers, will they know that? Will they start pushing it a little bit?
I think this is where we may see some penalties. We saw it in F2 earlier today, that penalties will start creeping back in, because I think they will be strict on the track limits. But again, it's about feeling your way into it. We mentioned before that some of the racers in the real world could drive this track blindfolded. They know the circuit so well. It's just not the case with these guys, but it'll be interesting to see how they respond.
Definitely. Listen, blindfolds off, because we're going to get to the race right now. Alex Jakes, Matt Gallagher, 25% of this race. Who's your money on?
Well, you've got to beat the man on pole position when it comes to the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya, and Barry Bromond is a super competitor. He qualified for the 2020 Esports Championship, and he's showing why he's got that talent, so he's the man to beat for me.
And what about yourself, Matt?
Freddy Rasmussen, he's had a week off. He's going to be back, and, well, let's see who gets into the lead Turn 1.
Well, indeed. Let's hope he's got all the turbos ready for this one. I'll pass it over to you, gentlemen. Matt and Alex, take it away.
Well, that Turn 1 is going to be absolutely crucial, because it is such an important opening lap here, especially with so much talent, Matt. And who they go for, well, who's going to risk it? Who's going to play it safe? Who's going to play the long game? It's going to define the race that we see. Quarter distance coming up now.
It's funny, actually, you say the long game, because I know Tom likes to use the pun longue, Nicholas Longue, and I think it was P4 as well. There you go. He's looking pretty good, and it's going to be interesting to see, because the strategy isn't massive in this one, because it's 25%. So you've got the soft tyres, which I think a lot of them, if not all of them, qualified on. So we're not going to see that longer medium runner, and then we're going to look now to the race.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red lights of the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya. They go out. And we're underway for this 17-lap race, with Boromund going ahead and staying there for the moment, but they're going to go 3 wide. Can Rasmussen find a way to the inside, or will the Alfa be the last of the late breakers? All the way around the outside. Tries Danny Berezne. Can he find his way through? That was a huge risk he took down there, but Boromund has managed to stay there for the time being, and Barry Boromund, for the moment, super stuff from him, hangs on to P1. Rasmussen in P2, then Berezne tried to swoop around the outside, couldn't get it done. That's left him on the back foot. Longue up to P3, and then Carreton will be all over the back of the Alfa. Big risk taken by the Hungarian driver Danny Berezne. It's not paid off. It's Boromund in the lead.
They all know that this is the best time to make any positions up. It's only a 25% race. They haven't got a huge amount of strategy in order to do undercuts, overcuts, 2 stops. This should be a 1-stop race, and Boromund has done a fantastic job defending his first position off the start. Freddy Rasmussen, we know how calm and patient he is. Will we see a different side to him this time, where he actually gives a lunge, gives a send? Danny Berezne, got to give it to him. I know he's lost a position and down to P4, but what an attempt to go round the outside. Just not enough grip. He had to send it. He tried it on his teammate, but right now, Boromund has the upper hand.
He wasn't going to go to sleep tonight wondering whether that move would have worked. He sent it around the outside, ran out of road, and has fallen down to 4th. As Barry Boromund with the fastest lap of the race, but not much of a lead over Freddy Rasmussen, who's trying to go back past him immediately. So this is going to be high-pressure stuff. Boromund, who is a PS4 Challenger champion, steps up to F1 Esports, and he will be hoping that he can keep the Red Bull driver behind. will he be the surprise package that throws down the gauntlet and forces everyone else to take a step forward? We will find out in the next few laps around this circuit. Longuet is all over the back of the team that he was with last year in the battle for P2.
Look, this is interesting. I find it, you know, we've got a bit of a shaking up of the grid, it has to be said. You know, you've got Burmand out in front, you've got some guys, Tanitsa, maybe just relaxing a little bit, because these, I know that, you know, these exhibition races, for some of these guys, may not be as important as the real thing, but for the others, the ones that want to make a name for themselves, this is where they're putting in the hours, they're putting in the practice, and it's going to pay dividends when it comes to the next few series, because Burmand, he's putting in the hours, it's clear to see that, and he is now as quick as Rasmussen. And then maybe, I'm not assuming, I'm not saying that these guys are taking a few days off and not pushing as hard, but the ones that you'd expect to be nearer the front, Bono Huis, for example, Tanitsa, Benito, you know, he was great at McLaren. He was pretty much a 5th or 6th most of the time. I don't know. It's just a theory, but I think that right now, the ones that are putting in the effort, I hope they see their efforts get some sort of reward.
When it is a game that is so much down to practice, it is the hours that you put in which give you the reward. As we go on board with Alvaro Carreton, the Spanish driver, currently occupying P5 in the Williams. Daniele Haddad ahead of his teammate Lucas Blakely before you get to Johnny Tormola, ahead of Marcel Kiefer, so that will give him a little bit of satisfaction given that he headed out of the Red Bull team. On board with the driver in P5, and we are getting into that sort of rhythm that you get with the circuit here with its 16 turns and the chicane at the end of the lap, which it's a circuit that was built in 1991 and all very similar in terms of rhythm, and then the chicane plonked in the final sector was put in to try and promote overtaking, but it rather interrupts the rhythm there. You can see that we've got a bit of a train developing behind Boromont as he tries to hang on to things. There's not much margin for error, is there, that? This is seriously impressive stuff from everyone out there, and Beresnay trying something drastic and coming into the pits to make a stop.
I was about to say the undercut is the crucial thing here. Who is going to jump the gun and go for it? And that is an early pit stop.
Is that a change of lead? Is that a change of lead out front? Freddy Rasmussen goes around the outside, I think it was, of Barry Boromond, and he's been putting the pressure on lap 4. The Red Bull driver takes the lead.
Well spotted. I was too busy looking at the intervals, but nice one there, Alex. Saved my bacon. But yeah, Rasmussen into the lead, and that is a crucial move. I was not expecting that. Maybe Boromond wants to save some of his ERS, his electrical energy, because it's gonna be taking a pounding when you're in the lead and pulling along a full train of cars. But right now we have to keep an eye on Danny Beresnay. A very early pit stop. The engineer or whoever Freddy Rasmussen will have in his ear will be telling him that as soon as possible to say, right, look, there's a few people going for the undercut. Brendan Lee, another one, obviously an F1 Esports champion. So these guys know what they're doing. Two very quick guys. They're going for an extremely early pit stop. And I know that the medium tyres can last forever around here in the 25% race. They're not really going to struggle towards the end, and it's a great move. Who else are we going to see into the pits, Alex?
It's going to be very interesting to see if they respond. Will they respond? The answer is, well, yes, if you're P2 and P3 on board with Barry Boromond. Freddy Rasmussen goes around for another lap. As does Carreton, as does Blakely, but in came Longuet, in came the car you're on board with at the moment, the Alpha of Boromond, who will try and pick out his team. There they are. Comes in, takes on the medium tyres at a track where track position is absolutely crucial. Will Boromond get out ahead of his teammate Danny Beresnay? That is the important thing. Here we go, going to be very close into turn number 1. This could be so important, and he's got the inside line, and Boromond has the advantage over Danny Beresnay, but he's got to switch on immediately here because he's under pressure from his race-winning Hungarian teammate, but it's Boromond who does respond. 1 lap later, keeps track position, and the undercut, well, it's worked to get past Longuet, but it's not worked to get past the other Alpha. So that could well be Boromond with an advantage. Has Rasmussen called this correctly at the moment? Still the driver in the lead as the strategy plays out for this exhibition race for the esports drivers.
Great racing instinct from Danny Beresnay. Took a chance. He's put himself in the mix now. I feel like, unless Rasmussen has a fantastic in-lap, he's going to fall behind both of these Alphas. So we'll find out very shortly as Rasmussen dives into the pits, as does Caraton, as does Blakely. Oh, locking up the fronts. That would have been close on the pit limiter. But for me, I feel like Bouremann's probably going to take the lead here. And it depends also, as so many people come in the pits, will Rasmussen get held? No, he doesn't.
Oh, he's lucky to find a gap between the Toro Rosso AlphaTauri or the McLaren there. Right, here's Bouremont trying to retake the lead that he lost at turn 1. Let's find out. There's the Alfa Romeo. Ah, he's got an advantage. He's got an advantage. Rasmussen has track position, went a couple of laps longer and comes out ahead of both of the Alphas. So you saw how hard he was pushing into the pits, and it's given him track position. He knows that he needs minor braking of the toe there from Rasmussen. Rasmussen keeps track position. The driver who benefited in that round of pit stops, Danny Beresnay. The driver who went backwards was Nicolas Longuet. Marcel Kiefer in the other Red Bull is the race leader, but that's because he's not yet come into the pits. Advantage Rasmussen.
Fantastic work from Rasmussen, it has to be said. I pretty much wiped away his chances of staying out in front of the well, net race lead, I guess it is. As, well, he's got the fresher tyres, he's leading this train. Can he pull away? I think that will be a gargantuan task for Rasmussen around this track, because they are so closely contested. Bouremont, can he do what Rasmussen did to him before the pit stops, as Kiefer comes into the pits now? And Michael Romanidis does the fastest lap of the race on the medium tyres. So that's very interesting to see that. Pushing very hard indeed, but I feel like Rasmussen will smash that when he has his first flying lap out of the pits.
On we go to lap number 7. Michael Romanidis, the race leader. Bono Huis in P2. David Tanitza yet to stop. We're on board with Nicolas Longuet, who could well be looking at P4 when all those ahead make their stops. He seemed very, very comfortable with his new team. Was frustrated to sit on the sidelines for so much of last year with the Red Bull setup. Now a part of the Renault Esports outfit, and he finds himself part of a train that's building behind Beresnay, who's slipping backwards. If anything, you can see that Longuet and Caraton right there at the moment in the Renault and the Williams, but it's nicely done so far. Rasmussen, if ever there was a driver that you did not want to get into the lead here from the opposition's point of view, it is Freddy Rasmussen, because he is so good at controlling a race.
Do you reckon he was listening to the broadcast when I said, I wonder if Rasmussen will be patient or if he'll actually go for it? Well, he went for it into turn 1, and it could be a move that decides this race. 10 laps to go. And obviously we've got the top 9, which are all on an alternate strategy, all starting on the mediums, and then you've got everybody else behind that has stopped. So Simon Weigang is the last of those runners that has stopped, but that should change when everybody comes into the pits. Freddy Rasmussen, as predicted, was the fastest lap of the race, a 1:19.1, trying desperately to get more than a second over Bouremont. But right now it doesn't look like that's the case. But you can just see Freddy Rasmussen has that extra tenth in this race pace. That means that Bouremont can't really get close. Whether Bouremont made a mistake in that final chicane that allowed Freddy Rasmussen through into turn 1, that could be my only theory there, as you know, these guys are so close, and you wouldn't expect Freddy Rasmussen to have done such a move into turn 1 unless it was absolutely on, and that's exactly what it was. And look how close this is. Longuet, Caraton and Blakely. Blakely actually very impressive, it has to be said, although he's 1.6 seconds behind Caraton. Sorry, so that's Beresnay, Longuet and Caraton, and Blakely just a little bit further behind. Brendan Lee was another one of those that tried the undercut, but doesn't really seem to have gained too much, although he was quite far down the grid. P15 I think he was starting. Shame to see that after what a fantastic first race he had in this Pro Exhibition.
There's 3 seconds between Néstor Garcia in 9th, who's yet to stop, and Freddy Rasmussen with the net race lead of the drivers who have come into the pits, now 2.9, and Rasmussen will be hoping that Néstor Garcia comes into the pits, and as if by magic he has. So that was a potential problem on Rasmussen's radar. That's disappeared, and you can see a much bigger gap now up to the McLaren ahead. So 8.4 seconds. So it's just a straight duel now, and that wouldn't have been a back marker. That wouldn't have been a ghost car situation. They had not made their stop, so he would have had to get by. Wouldn't have been the hardest task given the difference in tyre compounds, but also it's not difficult. It's very, very difficult to get past around here. So that problem has disappeared for the Red Bull driver. The McLaren is the next car up the road. We are on board with Nicolas Longuet. We've seen a yellow car dive to the inside at that corner already today. Didn't have the momentum to pull that on Danny Beresnay ahead. Multiple race winner Beresnay, who's just a few car lengths behind his teammate, who's made a big impression in the last couple of rounds and is still chasing down Rasmussen. Got to look after these. Well, you normally have to look after these tyres, but they can do so many laps around here on the mediums, can't they, Matt? So it's all out and out, and it's ultimate pace right now.
Ultimate pace, but 2 laps difference does, you know, that half a tenth, that tenth that Beresnay is now lacking. You can see it. He's falling off the back of his teammate. 1.3 seconds, which means he is not going to get the drag reduction system as he comes over the line to start another lap. And it looks like it's starting to become a 2-horse race for the victory here between Rasmussen and Bouremont. Beresnay is looking in his mirrors, which isn't something he's usually doing. And Longuet could have an opportunity and goes to the inside towards turn 1.
He's got the inside line. He's going to get to the apex first. Will he be the only one going through for the moment? Longuet moves up to what could be the final place on the podium later on. The Renault driver making his way through and disappearing. Carreton trying to do the same thing as well. You don't want to do a Rosberg or a Hamilton into turn number 4, and he's had to wait. It's very, very close as well, though. Not much at the front between either of them, and Longuet getting the job done, and he will try and make it a 3-car battle for the race lead.
Another display of Beresnay having amazing qualifying pace, but not translating it to the race, which, if we're looking at an F1 Esports Series across a number of races, is not looking like a championship contender right now as Beresnay, which isn't something I would have said, really, going into these exhibition races. Definitely one that you'd expect to have a few wins in the bag. But right now, they're catching it. It's exciting me. It's exciting that these drivers that you wouldn't expect, Bouremont, for example, coming out of nowhere, and he is fighting the veterans of this series. And that's the beauty of esports. You don't have to go through many, many seasons of things to get into this. You just have to show raw speed. You have to impress a Formula 1 team, which, may I remind everybody that these are all representing real Formula 1 teams. And then that's it. You've got the seat. And that is very exciting to see, as Beresnay could come under pressure again. But fortunately for him this time, he has the DRS of Longuet.
He has. Beresnay, 3rd in the 2019 championship, 5 wins in his time in the Esports Championship, and still the Alfa Romeo, 70 years after they took victory in the very first Formula 1 Grand Prix of the World Championship at Silverstone, trying to celebrate that anniversary with a win in the Esports here as well. And Rasmussen can't get clear of Bouremont, who remains 4/10, half a second away from the driver. Villas, Benito and Huis yet to stop the top 3, and then this battle for the real lead will become the actual battle for the lead. Red Bull leading Alfa at the moment, and this is high pressure stuff for Rasmussen. Is he up to it? Couldn't make the move on Brendan Lee back when we raced around the Shanghai International Circuit. Can he hang on at a racetrack where you've got to be very, very confident, or you've got to be willing to risk a second position to try and take that win?
Oh, so that tiny bit of oversteer that Barry had over that last chicane has cost him 0.3 of a second. And Freddy Rasmussen, that's it, just one tiny mistake, and Freddy Rasmussen is gone. You cannot make any mistakes in this series. And just want to touch on another driver, Brendan Lee, who I did say hadn't particularly made much progress, but he's up to P7 now that everything's shaked out, although there are drivers behind that have much quicker tyres on their car right now. So Brendan will have to do a bit of defending over these next few laps. But right now, P7, much better than his qualifying pace. And that's the better way to have it round. It's better to be a little bit slower in qualifying and a bit quicker in the race than the other way around and losing positions. So right now, pretty good drive from him. Marcel Kiefer up to P9 and crucially ahead of Joni Tormela. That battle for the Red Bull seat continues, half a second between them. I wonder if that'll boil over. Maybe not yet, but it's interesting to have that storyline, isn't it, Alex?
Absolutely is, and you can see how closely everyone's matched out there. Very little in the way of the spread between the drivers. We've got a bit of a gap between the battle for the win and the battle for P3, and then it is absolutely nose to tail all the way down to Bono Huis there. So you're a lock-up away from heading basically out of the points. Such is the nature of this circuit. And look at how much Caraton is trying to get the power down and hanging on to it around that final corner. He's got the DRS, but crucially, so has Beresnay in front. And so far, that's been enough to insulate Beresnay from any attack from Caraton. So Caraton, who does seem a lot more confident around the other turns of the racetrack, unable to do anything because of Beresnay with his DRS. Finally poised in the battle for fourth position as Rasmussen just opens that gap up at the front of the field. Nearly, well, it's heading towards a second right now. He's put a good couple of laps on, just inching clear.
If he breaks a second, he's probably home and dry if Freddy Rasmussen's previous performances are anything to go by. Alvaro Caraton, that last lap was really interesting. He just sensed an opportunity there where Beresnay was a little bit slower through that last chicane, but unfortunately his line wasn't ideal either. He then accelerated too hard and then got a proper slide on around that last corner. Nicolas Longuet is not home either, as he's P3, right, not actually that far ahead of Beresnay. So I think that he's made a small mistake because Beresnay was falling into the clutches of Caraton. Blakely's close as well in P6. Brendan Lee, P7, as you say, they're so close. And yet they just need to get a bit ruder. They need to just send it, just like we saw in the F2 race, the first broadcast of today, where, you know, Nato just sent it. You know, he wasn't particularly scared of what his opponent thought of him. Will we see that from Caraton this time around? I don't think he's close enough into the braking zone.
No opportunity for him on this occasion. And then it's just a case of your next realistic opportunity is turn 10. But again, you need so much momentum to be able to pull that off. Response from Barry Borman last time around to get the gap down momentarily to 0.7 of a second, back up to 8 now. So frustration, this easy to make a move that goes wrong around this circuit. So Caraton having to size that one up, but this is not for the official championship. These are exhibition races that the drivers are putting on for us. And I wonder if anyone is going to do an impression of Daniel Ricciardo back in 2016 when Mr. Vettel wanted to know if they were racing or playing ping pong. That's the sort of move you've got to be willing to take, though.
Absolutely. Yeah, get a bit ruder. Let's see some wheel banging. But you know, turn 1 is so difficult. It's not the hardest of braking zones. And it's a little bit, well, it's lovely. It's lovely and flowing, but it's not great when you want to actually do an overtake. But I was just going to mention David Taniza down in P15, our previous year's F1 Esports champion, very much having an off day, hasn't really shown. I don't know, is he holding his pace back in these exhibition races? Does he think there's not really much point? I'm not sure.
Do you think he's treating it like a mock exam?
I don't know.
No, it's not the real thing. I'll try when it comes to the real thing.
It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah. You know, when the championship's back on, then I'll show you what I've got.
I mean, it's an interesting mind game if he is putting that to play right now, thinking, yeah, you know what, let's not mix it with the front guys. But you know, I think it's great practice for these guys, especially with Rasmussen out in front, still proving he is the one to beat. And Buremund, well, as I mentioned earlier, the guys that potentially haven't made a name for themselves now, this is their opportunity. This is where the spotlight is on them. And it's great to see Buremund, Blakely, he's had so many heart-wrenching races in the past where you just think that maybe he's going to get an amazing result, and then something went pretty badly for him. But this is a great platform for him. Running in P6, only 2 places behind 5-time winner Danny Beresnay. Let's see, with lap 15 coming towards the end of it, onto the penultimate lap. Will we see any moves? I hope so. Maybe between Marcel Kiefer and Yoli Tourmalet. That would be spicy, wouldn't it?
Yeah, not much between those two. Beresnay staying within that DRS range, and despite the fact that it looks for the rest of the lap that Caraton has the measure of the cars in front.
He's unable between the top 2, Alex.
Anything. Sorry. Yeah, Buremund has got that down in the last couple of laps. There's nothing between them now. Good exit for Beresnay, and he's not able to do anything with that momentum. And it absolutely is a train right now. But it's Longuet at the head of the field, and he's got plenty of mates with him there. So Longuet, Beresnay, Caraton, Blakely, and there's the Mercedes of Lee ahead of the Racing Point of Haddad, then Kiefer and Tourmalet. That race-long battle between the two of them. And maybe a slight mistake, slight wide moment for Rasmussen, maybe just to make a couple of laps from Boromund as he tries to get the gap down towards the end. But it all looks a little bit like lap number 1. It's the penultimate lap of the race. Hardly any difference between these fantastic esports drivers, but no one right now able to do a Ricciardo and send one to the inside.
It is possible, though. We saw Rasmussen on Boromund at the start. We've seen a few other very nice overtakes. That's exactly what you've got to do. A very nice one to pull a move on these drivers. For Longuet, he cannot make one tiny error, one tiny correction on the steering wheel, especially around that last chicane. And then he's under pressure. But right now, he is absolutely amazing in P3, but he has to defend into turn 1.
Oh, he tried this on the opening lap. On the last lap, Beresney's trying to go around the outside. He's wheel to wheel with Carreton, hoping for drama between these two. P3 being disputed on the final lap of the race, and they're going to go to turn number 4. And I think Longuet's just about done enough. On board with the Williams in P5 at the moment. Longuet clinging on to the final step of the podium, but he's off the racing line. He's compromised all the time. That's why Carreton's tried to go wide as he opened the door for Lucas Blakely. Not quite, and you can tell they know they're on the last lap. Oh, that's wide. That's going to seriously compromise his line all the way up the hill. Big opportunity for Blakely there. Carreton is going to be vulnerable, and Longuet hung on somehow to 3rd position.
Brendan Lee's in the mix as well. Going to look towards the hairpin. Going to try and go round the outside of Blakely there. That'll be an audacious move. Oh, he's gone off the track.
You're always going to be shown the runoff area there, and somehow I think they're all basically in the same positions that they started this final lap. Barry Boromund has put a fantastic race together, but he can't get past Rasmussen, who's round the final corner. He's controlled the race brilliantly, and on his return to the championship, Freddy Rasmussen takes the checkered flag to win in Barcelona. A super performance from him. Boromund in 2nd, Longuet in 3rd. Beresney did hold off Carreton. Blakely stayed ahead of Lee, and it was all very close, but no one was able to improve in the final stages. A super drive from the Red Bull driver. He has taken P1. What a super performance from him. Oh, breathless stuff, but no moves at the end there.
How on earth did they all stay in the same positions in that last lap? You had Brendan Lee off the track, and yet they all stayed the same. Tom, that was very exciting.
Not just exciting, it had everything, and we expected it to be so close. After qualifying, there was just hundreds of seconds between all of those drivers, and it sort of performed as well in the actual race.
It was good to see them go for some moves towards the end there, because we do always get accused at the Circuit de Catalunya of being a procession. It's not easy to overtake, but as we've said so many times before, the grid is so tight, so little to choose between all these races. Yeah, it's a great race to watch.
And the storyline that we kind of set up and really crowbarred in was that one of the AlphaTauri versus the Red Bull. Marcel Kiefer finishing 1 place above Joni Tormela, and that was the battle that was going on further down at the grid. But as for Rasmussen, took a week off, he comes back, he cements his place as being the #1 driver.
With a bang. Yeah, disappointed really to see Kiefer down in P9, but as you say, Rasmussen controlled the race from beginning to end. Early pit stops, which were at the time surprising, but it worked out well. And track position, as we've seen so many times, is crucial. So everyone under a lot of pressure not to make a mistake, to have a clean race. Even the smallest of lockups could cost them dear. And yeah, Rasmussen, you know, back where he obviously feels he belongs. Well done him.
Indeed. And also Barry Boromund, amazing work from him in the Alfa Romeo, as well as Daniel Beresney. It was brilliant in that last lap, trying to overtake Longuet, but he was saying no in the Renault. And then you saw Alvaro Carreton trying to manoeuvre around. It had everything there. I believe that Alvaro Carreton, you're joining us right now. Alvaro, what did you make of that race this evening?
Hello. Yeah, it was a great qualifying. Obviously, congratulations to Barry for that incredible lap. Yeah, I started P5. I couldn't pit stop earlier because I had to wait the people in front to pit. Otherwise, I will get stuck in the pit. And then, yeah, I had more pace. I tried to overtake, but it was impossible.
It seemed that way. Natalie and I were watching it. However, we both commented at the start of the show how well you've been performing. Have you noticed that, and are you aware of how well you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, for sure. There's have been a huge mental change from my side. And yeah, it's paying off, the hard work and the dedication. So I'm really happy for it.
You talk about a mental change. What do you put that down to?
it's about believing in myself and being confident that I'm fast. I can be up there every time. I do not need to risk. I just need to drive clean, safe, and I'll be there. So yeah, it's working.
It seems to be working. However, there was that bit where Berezni was trying to overtake Longwy, and you were trying to cut round and try and salvage maybe fourth or third in there. What do you remember from that moment?
Yeah, obviously it was really difficult to overtake because Danny had a lot of speed on the straight. He had also DRS, and I was just looking at them, how they battle, how they fight. I was just a passenger. I tried to overtake Danny in turn 5, I think, but yeah, it was impossible. But still a really good position.
And how have you been finding racing from home? How is that kind of context different to normal?
Well, you have everything set up for you. Obviously, I'm used already to drive in the F1 Esports arena, so the equipment is the same. So yeah, it's only the pressure is a bit lower here.
Yeah, pressure might be lower. However, I've just got to quickly ask on this. Is Romanidis giving you that pressure as a teammate?
Yeah, for sure. He's a really, really fast driver. And he's going to be really good at F1 Esports probably, so watch out for him. And yeah, I hope he can develop, do great races with me alongside. So yeah, we'll see.
All right, well, listen, Alvaro Caraton, thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you for taking part in the F1 Esports Pro Exhibition. Well, there you go, Natalie. He's talking about that mindset that he had. And I don't suppose that will end there in our next Virtual Grand Prix when we have the guys back again. They're going to be battling out, trying to make that difference because they're so close at the moment.
And to Matt's point, it's great to see some new names really proving themselves amongst the old order. And it shows that with the right dedication and time, you can just edge your way up that order. You know, it's an open field, although a tight one.
Yeah, indeed. All right, so looking at that race, is there any drivers that stood out for you? Any others that really shined tonight?
I mean, I think Rasmussen has got to take all the plaudits tonight. You know, he had a week out, he got his head down, practised hard, and came back. Real statement of intent. Perhaps could have got another flying lap in there. Pole is king, obviously, at Barcelona, where it's so difficult to overtake. But he proved himself today, able to get that overtake and take the top step of the podium. Well done him.
Well, listen, Natalie, please don't go anywhere. We have got the F1 Virtual Grand Prix coming up. And a massive thank you to Alex Jakes and to Matt Geller up in the comms. Listen, guys, do not go anywhere. We'll be back again with another F1 Esports Pro Exhibition race. But right now, get ready, 6 o'clock BST time for the Spanish Virtual Grand Prix. Thank you very much for watching. See you again next time.
4-5 lights are on. It's all to race for. Coming to turn